Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of What's Happening. Again, my name is Sarah Lowenthal, and I'm so excited to be facilitating and to be bringing questions to Rabbi Jacobson. We're getting tremendous responses. So many people are really fascinated, not just by the question, but mainly by the answer, and they're able to integrate it into their lives. So we're super happy that this is a helpful podcast, and please give us your feedback. Send your questions in to hello@whathappening.ca. So the question for today came in, and I am going to read the question out loud. Questions as follows. Dear Rabbi Jacobson, this past year has been an especially challenging year for our family since our son didn't get accepted into the local yeshiva of his choice. Rejection, betrayal, outsider. These are some descriptions of how we felt. But there's more. The way the school never gave us a chance. They never gave us a straight reason and likely based their decision off rumors that they heard. Now, I understand that the yeshiva does have complex values and they have a responsibility for their standards. But my child is not a label. My child has strengths, struggles, and so much potential. And yet the way this was handled and the way that this yeshiva said no to us made us feel like there's something wrong with our child and with us. And we all know that chinuch is not about perfection. It's not about being in a box. It's about patience and guidance and role modeling and potential. And don't our yeshivas and our schools, for that matter, our high schools, our seminaries, don't they have a responsibility to care for our community and for our children? Do we only care for the non-challenging, for the perfect children? Rabbi Jacobson, I really would appreciate your insight on this. So this is the question that came in today, and I'm hoping that Rabbi Jacobson could shed some light and really understand, because the truth is I myself am all confused. On one hand, I understand that the schools have to uphold a certain standard. On the other hand, these are our children. These are our community, and who's going to care for them? So I think this is a question worth asking, and I really look forward to the answer.
Wonderful to be back to What's Happening. The issue that you raised, Mr. Lowenthal, is a very serious issue, and Be'ezer Hashem will try to address it, to try to describe what's actually happening. It's a very difficult question to deal with, because it's so hurtful. It's so hurtful for parents to deal with the reality that this is what their child is being told, that their child, and there are two aspects of it here. Parents are hurt for their children much more than they're hurt from themselves. We, as parents, could handle rejection as much as it's unpleasant and uncomfortable and painful, but when it's with regards to our own rejection, we can deal with it. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes more difficult, sometimes it takes us longer or shorter, but we can handle it. When it happens with our child, every parental instinct just is activated. So what we do to save our child, to protect our child, to keep our child safe, and we suddenly we start doubting ourselves as parents. We start feeling often, as you described, I think also in the wording of your question, not to pick on the words, but what does that say to us as parents? When our child is rejected, when our child is not accepted, when our child is told that they can't come to a certain school or certain yeshiva. And this makes it very, very difficult, and it's very painful. It's often when parents start doubting themselves. And where do you go? Where do you go with such a question? There's no good news. Just do this and everything will be okay. No, there's a child. My child may be younger or older, but it's a child. It's a person. It's somebody that parents are responsible to look after, and do what they can for them to be successful. And now suddenly they failed. So the parents feel like they failed. They feel terrible for their child. The child often feels bad. Parents get very scared as to what's the future hold for my child now that they were rejected. How is the child going to handle it? So it awakens a lot of fears and a lot of, it touches us in many, many uncomfortable places. It makes us feel very, it's beyond vulnerable. It scares us. All our fears come to the fore with this question, with this reality. What happens if our child or when our child is rejected from a school? And you also bring up, is it the responsibility of the school? Is it not the responsibility of the school to make sure that our children are educated? So there are a few aspects to these questions and a few ways of looking at it and a few ways of dealing with it, a few ways of approaching it. And I think the most important thing, as we had discussed in previous and other episodes, that we have to try to approach things from a very rational, very logical point of view. And in the wording of your question, I heard pain, and understandably so. I understand why a parent that is experiencing this is hurt and is afraid. And there's a lot of emotion. The question is filled with emotion, and it's understandable. But in order to address this question, we have to ask ourselves, okay, what's the right thing? What's rationally the right thing and the good thing to happen now? So let me first address a question purely as a theoretical idea. Is it acceptable for a school or yeshiva to not accept a child? If we present the question in this way, I think that everybody would agree that at times, for sure, that is the case. Just because a school or yeshiva opened, it does not mean that it's for everybody. There could be many different reasons of why a certain child should not be that this child should not fit into this school or yeshiva. There could be medical issues. There could be different challenges that people might face that would make them attending the school not beneficial for themselves or for the school or for the students in the school. There could be challenges that they face emotionally, challenges that they face spiritually. So I think that everybody would agree that the school does not have an obligation to accept every single child. In a certain way, however, this makes the emotion of the question much more difficult, because every parent will agree that not necessarily should every child be accepted. Now, if I get that rejection letter, that just means that my child is part of that, 5% of children that should not be accepted. That's really, really painful. That's really, really difficult to hear that, to hear even if it's only an opinion. But it's very difficult to accept that. And it's very difficult to hear it, to struggle with it, to accept it. And the pain of it makes it much more difficult. And often what we do is we go into blaming. We often will find different reasons, whether they're correct or incorrect, justified or not justified. Well, the school is not accepting my child because of X, Y, and Z. It's nothing to do with what they're up to, what they're not up to. So I want to read a few letters from the Rebbe, a few short letters from the Rebbe on the subject that point out to a certain approach. That it's not such a black and white question, that every single situation has to be dealt with. with regards to the particulars of the question, and then I'll try to summarize and try to share my understanding of these letters and what the Rebbe's position on this subject matter is. So here are some letters. Here's one letter, 1955. It's printed in Likutei Sichos, in the back of Likutei Sichos, Chelik Chav Beis. For those that are looking for it, it's on page 407. Maybe we should link it to the post it on the together with online wherever it's possible. So the Rebbe writes here, "Mashakaysev oidus atalmidim apoitzim geder hare yedua nekuda shetoivas harabim doiche toivas hayachid." It's known that the benefit of the many outweigh the benefit of the individual. With regards to the students that are breaching fences, so it's known that the benefit of the many outweigh the benefit of the individual. However, there are cautions. Shetzarich lasis kichola efreshiri shegam hayachid lo yidacha. All efforts must be exerted and all must be done that also the individual should not be pushed away. Okemamar Azal, as our sages teach us, lo'elam tehei yamin mekareves, that we should always draw closer with our right hand. The dominant force in our activity, in our interaction with other people, should be to bring people close. V'tikvasi, it is my hope, shekshiyidabru imam beis hisvados, that if the student is, or the students are spoken to at the time of gathering or time of farbrengen, v'oifen shel kirov, in a way to bring them closer, v'gam aydei chavereim, also through their friends, yishanu hanel as hanhagasam, they will change their behavior. This is one letter, 1955. Another letter on the next page is from 1957. So this is not a 2026 question. It didn't just start in 2026 or 2025. We're talking about many years ago. It's discussed earlier as well. So here's 1957, another letter, same point. The benefit of the many or the public outweighs the benefit of the individual. And there it makes it very clear. Not every person that wants to be accepted to yeshiva must be accepted. Kivan shan haga prua, since wild behavior, especially such behavior that you describe in your letter, and shalom du mekam yeshivas when kolam nishlachum habayta mipat zeh, that they studied in a few yeshivas and they were sent away for this reason. This is detrimental to the others. I'm even surprised that you have a question about this. So here the Rebbe makes it abundantly clear that just because somebody wants to express his interest or signs up to yeshiva, applies to yeshiva, it doesn't mean that the yeshiva has to accept them. If the yeshiva feels that a certain student joining the yeshiva would be detrimental to other students, it's a responsibility of the yeshiva to make sure that this student does not get in. Let me continue this letter. The Rebbe differentiates between a person that's applying and a student that's already in the yeshiva. With regards to the students already in the yeshiva, this is very different. Excuse me. And that has to be addressed differently, with much more sensitivity and so on. So, and there are a number of letters in this vein here. Well, the Rebbe's position is very clear, that, and we understand the logic behind this. Parents send their children to yeshiva with the understanding that the faculty, the staff of the yeshiva will look after the well-being, the spiritual well-being and emotional and intellectual and so on, physical well-being of the student. And if they know of a certain student that could be detrimental or hurtful in any which way, it's the responsibility of the school to make sure that that student does not make it into the yeshiva. It's the responsibility of that staff. That's part of their responsibility, just like it's their responsibility to educate. However, the Rebbe makes it abundantly clear that the general attitude has to be one of Yamin Mekareves, to bring close. And as in this letter as well, where the Rebbe cautions that, and the Rebbe makes it very clear that not every student must be accepted, the Rebbe also says that there's a difference between not accepting somebody and accepting somebody and then throwing them out. Very, very big difference. There's a story with Rabbi Beryl Baumgarten, and this is early on in the Rebbe's leadership as well, which shows that this is Lishat Asayu. This is a path that the Rebbe always went by. He had a program on Shabbos of students joining him on Shabbos for some learning or some activity. At some point, he realized that one of the he realized that one of the students disappears during the learning, disappears for a bit. And every Shabbos, this would happen. After a number of times, he started picking up that this young man is unfortunately walking out to have a smoke on Shabbos, which is prohibited and terrible. And at first, he didn't know how to handle it and what to do. And he felt that this student has to be asked not to return because he was afraid of how that would affect the other students. And having a person that knows that you're not supposed to smoke on Shabbos and just walks out in the middle of a program and smokes, and he was afraid that the other students would pick up on it and it would have a bad influence on them. So he shared with the Rebbe that he intends on, this is what's going on, and this is the unfortunate reality, and he intends on telling the student, disinviting the student from joining in the future. And the Rebbe sent him a source of his Rabbi Jacobson, a chapter and a section chapter. And looking that up, he found that in that section, Rabbi Jacobson describes how Aaron would treat people, and that he would treat people with such love and respect that they did the right thing simply because Aaron HaKohen had such a great outlook towards them and such love and warmth towards them that in itself was a motivation for them to do the right thing. And in this, the Rebbe was sharing with young Rabbi Baumgarten the approach of what we're supposed to take, how to inspire students, to inspire young men and women to do the right thing, not by pushing them away, by sending them away, by casting them away, by pushing them down, but by elevating them with warmth, with love, with elevation, with closeness, in an appropriate way, obviously, so that they should do the right thing. So here we have a license from the Rebbe that a school has a right to do what they're supposed to, and therefore this might appear to that I'm saying to the parent that your argument or your question is completely out of place, and you have nothing to tell the school. The school has a right to say as they wish, which is, on a certain level, that's true. Because the school does have the responsibility. God forbid if something happens, something negative happens, parents would come rightfully to the school staff and faculty and say, how did you allow for this to happen to my student, to my child? This is your school. You took responsibility. So if they're the ones that have to be answerable, so obviously they have to have the right to make their decisions as to what's best for each student. However, sometimes, unfortunately, we live in a reality that sometimes it could happen that schools get caught up with themselves and administrations get caught up with themselves, and they might forget at times that they're not there for running a school. They're there to educate children. They're there to educate students. They're there for the purpose of raising, inspiring, and educating students, as opposed to making sure that they have a job, making sure that they have a school with a good name, making sure that everybody says that the school is so phenomenal. And sometimes there could be a temptation. So to all educators out there, I have a huge amount of respect, I truly do. And I'm not saying this in any which way to disparage or to put down any educator or any faculty or person that is involved in education. It's a huge responsibility and very, very difficult work. But I think that the words that I'm saying are true, and I think that it's important to say this. So to the parent, I say, you have to think about what you could do. So do schools have a responsibility? They have a responsibility, and because they're responsibility, sometimes they have to say no. But a school also has to think very, very hard as to what they do, and more than anything, as to what they do, they also have to think about how they do it. There's a difference between telling a parent, I'm sorry, we can't help you. I'm sorry, your child just doesn't cut it for our school. Or telling a parent, I'm sorry, we cannot accept your child, but I'm going to work with you to find the right place for your child. Let's work together. I'm happy to work together with you to figure out a solution as to where your child could study, could be educated, could get really what they're looking for. Huge difference. I shared some letters pointing out that from the Rebbe, pointing out that school really does have the right and not just the right, but it's their responsibility to make sure that certain students don't make it into the school, possibly. I want to share another two letters. This is 1956. The letters are one after the other. I don't know that the first letter... I'm going to skip the first letter. I'm going to share one letter. This is letter 4411, Dalet Taf Yud Aleph. It's in Igros Kodesh Chelik Yud Gimel Amod Kuf Lametes. Kiyudu HaPizgam שהמחנכים של הישיבas וכו' הם בשביל התלמידים ולא להפך. It's known that the educators are there for the students, and not that the students are there for the educators. שמזה הרע שבמקום ספק יש לפסוק הדין באופן שהוא תועלת יסר בשביל התלמידים מבלי להתחשב כל כך עם השם טוב של המחנכים והמחוקקים. And therefore, if there's a doubt, the ruling must be for the benefit of the students, not taking into consideration so much the good name of the educators or the faculty. And perhaps this is self-sacrifice, because if your yeshiva now has a bad name, oy vey, what's going to be? But that's what has to happen. In our generation, in our times, this is demanded from us. As explained in Chassidus, that Mesiras Nefesh v'lo Mesiras Haguf v'hu shemevater al toiv asoi v'afilu al toiv ha'amiti tikdusha b'shvil te'eles azulas. That Mesiras Nefesh is Mesiras Nefesh, to give away the soul, is self-sacrifice, not to give away your body, meaning that you're willing to give up your own benefit, even what's really good, and even when what Kedusha says is good, for the benefit of another person. I'm skipping a few words, but the Rebbe goes on to say, we know that the saying, Kiyudu Pizgam Rabbeinu Azakim Balatanya, Ma'achitcha Chasidus, what Chasidus has accomplished. Omanase, the Alter Rebbe answered, the accomplishment, the great achievement of Chasidus is, La'ases Teva La'azulas Al Cheshbon Tevas Atzmai, to do a favor for somebody else on your own account, something that might, that is a sacrifice for you, something that you're giving up. Even at your own detriment. And the Alter Rebbe was asked, where's the proof for this in the revealed part of Torah? This is a phenomenal idea in Chassidus. Where does Gemara or Halacha say this? And the Alter Rebbe answered that this is a clear Gemara with regards to cutting our nails, that a Chassid burns their nails even at the cost of one's own detriment. In other words, in order to avoid a possible problem to somebody else, the Gemara tells us that a chassid burns their own nails. It might hurt us, but that's what we do in order to avoid an issue for somebody else. So over here we have a very interesting approach as well. So on the one hand, yes, the school has a right to make the decisions, that they need to have the right, they need to have the responsibility. I think that every responsible parent would say, yes, the schools need to have that right and the power, the authority to make such decisions. But at the same time, I sometimes hear from the schools or from school administrators or staff, faculty, well, we have a school to run. That's a horrible, horrible statement. Horrible. No, you don't have a school to run. You have students to educate. Yeah, but you know what I mean. No, that's no excuse. It's no justification. The staff, educators, teachers are there in order to raise students. That's what you're there for. And the Rebbe makes this abundantly clear in this letter and many other letters like this. The teachers are there for the students. The students are not there for the teachers. Yeah, but I have to uphold our name. No, you don't. No, you don't. That's not what you're there for. I have to make a glorious yeshiva. You have to raise students. Raise students that are Yirei Shamayim, that are God-fearing people, that are Oivdei Hashem, that serve Hashem. So this is the role of the. So yes, you can choose, but you have to be very, very careful that every interaction that you have with students builds them, raises them, lifts them up to the greatest heights, and not, God forbid, the worst of destroying, crushing, hurting, putting down, humiliating, degrading. It happens very, very quickly and unfortunately very, very easily. So yes, educators have a very, very difficult job. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm not just saying that just to pay some lip service. I truly believe it. And it is very difficult. They have an amazing schus, and together with that, they have an amazing achrayus. They have to do whatever they can to accept every student and to make sure that every student is looked after properly. So, going back to the parent, how should you feel about it? Do the schools have a responsibility? The schools have a responsibility to every single student. And the school and the staff and faculty have to do whatever they can to raise and to uplift every single child. That no child should ever feel humiliated or crushed or hurt by a faculty or a staff member. That's the worst thing that could happen. Because it's not just a one-time event. It's something that a student will carry for the rest of their lives. Doesn't mean that that destroys them. Doesn't mean it's a justification. But the reality is, we all know this. We all speak to different students. We might have experienced this in our own lives. The teachers that we had affect us in one way or another for many, many years to come. The interactions that we have with them are carried for many, many years to come. So I touched on this earlier. I think that a crucial point in whether we accept or not is not so much whether we accept, but how we handle the rejection. How the school tells the parent, I'm sorry, we can't accept your child. But Baruch Hashem, I've been on shlichus for quite a number of years, and I've helped quite a number of students in and out of yeshivas and schools and so on. And sometimes it happened that a student had to be thrown out. And I've experienced different type of staff members. And members of faculty that dealt with it. And there's something to be said by those that do it with sensitivity and kindness. I must say that I feel strongly that those that didn't do it with sensitivity or kindness were not coming from a bad place. Often what happens is I feel that a faculty member might have the awful task of telling a parent, I'm sorry, your child has to be sent home or is not being accepted, and they feel so uncomfortable doing that they push it off, and they delay, and they hoo and the ha, and the parents say, why don't I get an answer? And the reason that their parent is not getting an answer is because the faculty member simply doesn't know how to say it in a way that won't hurt their feelings. And they don't want to hurt their feelings. So what ends up happening is that they just push off and they hope that somehow that the issue will just disappear, or they push it off to a time when it'll be more convenient, but it's never convenient to do this. So sometimes in their interest in protecting the well-being of the parent or the student, they end up hurting much more. And I think, therefore, staff and faculty have to come to terms with that. If it is my task to unfortunately tell a parent that we can't accept your child or the child has to come home, the focus has to be placed on how to do so in a respectful, kind, and uplifting way. And I've seen faculty members do this. I've seen school staff at certain schools do it, and it's not manipulation or being politically correct. This is being professional. This is being sensitive, and this is being appropriate. And yes, when a child is told, you know what, or when a parent is told, your child doesn't fit into our school, but I will work with you to find the right place. Yeah, it might not be pleasant for the parent to hear. The parent might be very disappointed, and the parent might start judging themselves. I'll get to that in a moment. But just hearing that, you know what, I'm here with you. I'm not chasing them away. I'm not chasing your son or daughter away. I want to work with you. I want your child to be happy. I want your child to be successful. I see what's going on in school. I know your child's friends. I know what's going on. It's simply not going to work. It's simply not going to work in our school. But I want your child to be successful, so let's work together. I'll try to figure out solutions. I'll try to speak to other schools to get them into another school that I think where the issue might be mitigated, or the issue might be not as severe. Let's find solutions. It's a very big difference. And to truly care, to try to find a solution that would be beneficial for this child, because every single child, we have to remember, is a child of Hashem. Every single child is a gem, is a beautiful diamond. And it's our responsibility as adults to see what we can to do to raise these children, that they should be the children that bring Moshiach, that they should be children that their neshama lights up the world, that their neshama fills the world with warmth. It's our responsibility to try to do that. But I think that a very important aspect of this is to parents, that you can't approach this emotionally. As difficult as it is, you can't become bitter and angry and resentful or worse. You have to ask yourself, what's the best thing for my child right now? And part of the way you react also teaches your child how to react in other areas in life down the line when they experience rejection, when they experience disappointment, because they are going to be living through this situation together with you, and they're watching you subconsciously or perhaps even consciously of how are you going to handle this? How are you going to deal with this situation? And when they see a parent that is trying to do the right thing, and perhaps even open the child, you know what, I feel so hurt, I feel so disappointed, I'm in such pain. But you know what, let's focus on where we could find the right place for you. What is the best place for you? Let's figure out a solution. Perhaps we have to come up with a creative solution. Perhaps we have to come up with something sort of completely out of the box. But that also teaches a child of looking for solutions and looking for being productive, as opposed to becoming angry, jaded, disconnected or disenchanted with the people around them, to look for excuses of who to blame for their failures. Parents could very easily say, we're not being accepted because we don't have enough money, because we don't have the right name, because we're not the right family, because there's so many different reasons that we immediately jump at as to why we're not being accepted. But instead of that, let's actually look at what's happening. Hashem runs the world. And while we have to try to get our child into the school that is best for that us as parents feel is best for this child, sometimes Hashem says, you know what, your child belongs somewhere else. We have to allow for Hashem's plan to happen. So we have to do whatever we could. I'm not saying give up. I'm not saying just walk away. Try, but don't create a revolution. Do things with respect. Do things appropriately. Do things properly. And focus on what's actually best for your child, as opposed to getting back at somebody or showing somebody, oh, you're trying to stop me, I'll show you, I'll have you fired, I'll make sure that's not helpful to anything or anybody. And more than anything else, it's not helpful to a child. A child has to see how to approach things properly. And to ask themselves, what does Hashem want? Where does Hashem want me to be? I wish all parents a lot of nachas and smooth sailing, but we know that educating children is not meant to be smooth sailing. It's out there on the high waters, and there's sometimes waves that scare us and sometimes waves that threaten to capsize our ship. And we have to pray to Hashem and hold tight and please God by following what Torah says, following the guidance of the Rebbe, following obviously halacha, following the right approach. You should have much, much nachas from your children. Thank you.